All right. Hello and welcome to the Taste of Art program presented by Lehigh University Art Galleries. My name is Stacy Brennan and I'm the Curator of Education here in the Art Galleries. And we are here today for Taste of Art, which is a free public program that combines mini art history lessons with live cooking demonstrations. The program spotlights local Southside restaurants to celebrate and build awareness of the community's eclectic, historic, and diverse urban culture. Each workshop pairs a work of art from the collection with a related recipe from a featured restaurant to highlight, or a community partner, to highlight the diverse cultures and voices that make up Bethlehem's Southside community. This program is brought to us through support from the Institute of Museum and Library Services through the American Rescue Plan. If you haven't picked up a kit yet, please stop by the Bethlehem Farmers Market or Lehigh University Art Galleries, as a free limited number of kits are available for pickup. That will feature a recipe from today, as well as a kit to make your own cornbread. As part of this grant-funded program, participants are also eligible to win free gift certificates to local restaurants. So please make sure you like us and tag us on social media in order for you to be eligible to win. I am so fortunate to be joined today by our partner, Maite Gomez-Rejon, who is joining us all the way from Los Angeles, California, and also Deb Martin, who is here in Lehigh University's Office of Sustainability, also an editor and writer and local activist who runs the Bethlehem Farmers Market. So we are excited to be here, and today we'll feature some artworks that are currently on view as part of our Bodies of Knowledge exhibition across campus and in the South Bethlehem community. I'm going to share my screen here. So to start us off with this program, I'm excited to show an image that was taken in 1939 by Lou Stuman, who is a graduate of Lehigh University. He was also a documentary photographer, and here photographed one of the earliest farmers markets here in South Bethlehem, and just a great example of the vibrancy in the community and the connection to food and culture. If you're not familiar with Lehigh University, the piece that I just showed was one of nearly 20,000 works of art that we have from diverse time periods and cultures. So we're a really rich, vibrant resource in the community to explore different types of art made from all kinds of materials. Our featured partner today is the Bethlehem Farmers Market, which I mentioned, and we'll provide some information about this market later in our program. But the market usually runs from April through November every year on Thursdays from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And it's a great connection to our exhibition, Bodies of Knowledge, as I mentioned, which is an exhibition that explores all the many ways that we learn and explore the world through our bodies, through sensory and formative experiences. There are 5 different themes explored within this exhibition, 3 of which we'll look at today. Tools as an extension of the body, the ways that our bodies age and change over time, the way that we learn through sensory experiences through our bodies, as well as the social body, the way that we engage with each other and learn from each other. So the first artist that we're going to explore today is the artist Victor Vasquez. Victor is a Puerto Rican American artist. This work, Cosecha, also translated to harvest, was created in 1989. Victor is a multimedia artist that creates works in photography, 3-dimensional objects, video, and installation. This is a photograph from a performance piece that he created. He often used his own body or the body of friends and family to create pieces that really explored the human body, both conceptually and formally, as we see here, to explore ideas of identity, politics, anthropological inquiry, the ways that our body connects or how we connect to the natural environment, and also kind of playing with ideas of what's sacred and what's profane, how we kind of engage with that through cultural rituals, and different types of tradition. So we see that within this piece here, which is a great example of different types of harvest materials. As we're here now in October in the harvest season, we can see some of the many vegetables that might be available at our local farmers market. The second piece that we have here is by Ariane Chang Castan, who is a Cuban artist. This piece is from the series Long Life. Ariane was one of the many photographers who were part of a series through the Center for Demographic Studies that studied over 1,000 Cubans living in the country who were between the ages of 100 and 109. And so he was documenting just the different ways that people are living and celebrating life in older age, but also the challenges that they face with accessing medical equipment and medical supports in a country that has currently an economic blockade. So just the different challenges, and despite that, the long lives that people are living. Ariane is also a founding member of the Hibaro Photos Projects, which is an international group of photographers that document their current world. They explore their traveling photographers, and particularly Ariane was interested in documenting his own country in Cuba to discover for himself, but also portray its social and political context. So we have this beautiful photograph that he took here of celebrating a really important moment in our lives, and also a great example of the social body and how we support each other and learn from each other, both in family and familial context, but also through social gatherings with friends. And then we move down the Greenway, which is a 1.9-mile walking trail here in South Bethlehem, where we have reproductions of some of the works that are on view in the Bodies of Knowledge exhibition. Currently this semester, we paired works from Bodies of Knowledge with works that were submitted by local artists. And we're going to feature this billboard, which is a beautiful representation from work on the left from our collection, Ilse Bing, of Old Woman Eating in Paris in 1947, with the work of Anna Paris on the right called The Cafe, which is created in watercolor and gouache, colored pencil, and digital media, so a multimedia artist. Ilse Bing was a really famous photographer. She was born in 1899 and lived until 1998. She was a German avant-garde and commercial photographer who was producing monochrome photographs, often for French and German magazines. But she was really well known for her own personal photography, of which this is, for kind of documentary humanism. So as she called it, so documenting the everyday life experiences that we might encounter. And this is a wonderful photograph of this woman just enjoying a meal by herself. She seems to really be enjoying that, and kind of that sensory experience through exploring our world through eating, through smell, through taste. And then juxtaposed on the right is this beautiful painting by Anna Paris that Anna is currently a Lehigh student who is studying engineering, art, and design. And Anna is really, I think, documenting here the social experience of how food brings us together, and the ways that we can encounter each other and learn from each other within these kind of social contexts of cafes and restaurants, and the way that we can share culture and custom through food. So 3 really great examples from over 100 works that are currently on view in the Bodies of Knowledge exhibition, which will be up through the end of this year. This year meaning academic year, so May of 2024. And a great opportunity to engage in different artistic experiences and programs that we have throughout the year. But I love all of these works because I think they connect so well with our featured partner through the Bethlehem Farmers Market, and the way that farmers markets not only are important to South Bethlehem community, but the way that they bring us all together and connect and support small businesses within our community. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and introduce us back to Maite and Deb. Maite, I don't know if we wanted to start with kind of going over some of our featured recipes today, and how that might connect with our featured partner, Deb, who's here from Bethlehem Farmers Market.
Sure. So today we're going to make a squash, sweet potato, and apple soup. So thinking we're in fall, and these are vegetables and fruit that will be readily available, all over every farmer's market, I think, on the East Coast, on the West Coast, everything. And it's just a cozy sort of soup. We're getting into soup season, and it's the time when we all kind of meet, together. Thanksgiving is coming up, so it's sort of the perfect, I think, having a soup related to bodies of knowledge to the Bethlehem Farmers Market seemed to be sort of the perfect recipe. So I'm going to be making the soup, and then the kids will also have cornbread from one of the vendors in the farmers market. So it's this sort of beautiful representation of, the season, everybody coming together. And also these ingredients are from sort of all over the world. Many of them, or most of them actually, the squash and the sweet potato and the allspice are native to the Americas. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. And they go perfectly with the beautiful images that you showed from the exhibition. So this is a soup that can be made with any sort of, you could do pumpkin, you could do butternut squash, long neck squash, whatever is available, whatever you have. I'm going to make an acorn squash. And it's native to, actually all squashes are native to Mexico, Central America. And this is called an acorn squash because it looks like a giant acorn. So this soup has about 2 pounds. This is about a 2-pound squash. It's really kind of mild, a little bit nutty. And the best way to get a lot of flavor out of the squash is to roast it at 400 degrees for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that. So that's what I'm going to do just to get that ready. So this is pretty tough. So you just need to be careful when you're slicing it, but look how gorgeous it is. It doesn't look real. So I'm just going to go into one of these ridges, sort of, it'll naturally tell me where to go. And you just need to be super careful, and just slice it in half.
I don't think I've ever seen one that large before.
Really?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, it's a pretty giant. So it has all of these seeds. So what I'm going to do is just scoop out the seeds. And there are hundreds of different kinds of squashes, and all of them are native to the Americas. And pre-conquest, the diet of the Americas was mainly plant-based. And so this is one of the many squashes. It's in the zucchini family, actually. So I'm just scooping this out. And then really simple, all I'm going to do is get a sheet pan, put them on here. Let me actually flip the camera over so that people could see it well. Oops. How's that?
Oh, nice.
I don't know why it looks so big. Sort of like zoomed in, very strange. But okay, so here we have them, the 2 squashes. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put some olive oil. Just drizzle it with olive oil, just enough to coat. salt and pepper. Has quite a mild flavor, so want to season it really well. Salt and pepper, just kind of rub them a little bit. You want to put them cut side down with a little bit more oil. A little bit more salt and pepper. We're not going to use the skin in the recipe, although it's perfectly okay to use the skin because it's quite thin. And that's it. We're just going to bake this at 45 degrees. Does that look a little soft? It looks a little soft, doesn't it? That image.
Did you mean 450 degrees?
Yeah. Oh, no, 400.
400. Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to put it at 400 degrees for about 45 minutes. So I'm going to take these out.
Oh, look at that.
How gorgeous those are.
Beautiful.
They're beautiful. Just really nice and soft. Look at that.
Mm.
So they're really nice and soft. And so we're just gonna scoop that into the soup when we're ready. So I'm just gonna set this aside for now. And then we could talk about the farmers market. I'm just gonna put them there for now.
Now that we have this opportunity to see this beautiful squash, this brings us to seasonal fresh produce. We live in such a wonderful area in the Lehigh Valley where we have access to so many farms and small businesses that are growing their own crops. And we're so fortunate to have the Bethlehem Farmers Market here on Lehigh's campus every Thursday, run by Deb Martin, who's here with us today. And the farmers market features all small businesses and opportunities each week. There's a lot of different new vendors. So we'd love to hear a little bit more about that, Deb, if you could tell us.
Great. Yes. Thanks, Stacy. I'm so excited to be here and to be able to share with you a little bit about the farmers market. The Bethlehem Farmers Market is run through the Lehigh University Office of Sustainability, and it's operated to, provide a food source to the local community. It also provides a fresh food location for members of the campus community, and it's a place where we can bring together those sort of disparate groups of people, which is really wonderful. Across the street from our farmers market is a senior living facility. And so it's kind of cool to see folks coming from across the street and folks coming from the campus, and they all get together. But the market has, on average, 15 or so vendors every week. And they include a small farmer. He's not small. His farm is small. And a homesteader and several bakeries and prepared food vendors as well. The market itself has existed for 16 or so years in South Bethlehem. It's been in a few different locations, and probably 10 years ago, it became part of Lehigh University. And I've been managing the market for Lehigh since 2019. And it's a cool, happy place. I'm kind of a farmers market junkie myself. I'd like to go to different ones around the Lehigh Valley, and it's just so much fun to see people out enjoying themselves and getting fresh local food. One of our goals with the market is to support local small businesses, and often a farmers market is a place where people who are interested in getting a business started can sort of try it out without a lot of huge investment, because often the expensive part of starting your own business is the brick and mortar component of it, having a physical location. And it's a great place for people to be able to try it on without making a huge investment of infrastructure, and also to experiment a little bit with the products they want to offer, and to figure out what their audience is. And one of the vendors, the vendor who supplied the cornbread mix for the kits, is Azizi Deo of Soap Muffin. And she actually came from a corporate background some years in her past, and at some point decided that corporate life was not for her, and she invested in a homestead in the sort of in the Poconos here in Pennsylvania, and started farming. She has chickens and ducks and quail, and she, started growing things and started making soap, and found that that was a much happier and enriching lifestyle for her than, her life in the corporate world. And she's really expressed a lot of joy in being part of the Bethlehem Farmers Market, because she has had the experience of kind of tailoring her business to the audience that she's reaching at our farmers market. And so she had started making some baking mixes and things, and has found that those are really popular. She also makes prepared like soup mixes that you can add broth or water to and cook up. And I think they're very popular. She talks about, they're really doing well. And it's, an exciting way for her to explore, oh, this is something I could do with my business. But she incorporates ingredients that she produces herself on her farm. And it's really cool to see somebody growing and developing and figuring out where they want to be through the farmers market. So that's a cool thing. And then the produce vendor at the market is Lone Birch Microfarm. And like I said, they're a small farmer in that their farm is very small. They call it a micro farm. And they're really growing a lot of stuff on just a few acres. And the Lone Birch Microfarm is run by Eric and Connor Keim. They're a father and son, and Eric is retired from a career in the Navy. And Connor is his son, who is farming with him. And then Eric's wife, Donna, they call her the CFO, the Chief Floral Officer. And she grows flowers that they bring to the farmers market to sell as bouquets also. So it's very much a family operation, and they are diversified. They grow everything using organic practices. They don't use any chemical pesticides or herbicides or chemical fertilizers. It's all very natural based, but also like very modern in terms of they're using really good cutting edge technology in managing their land sustainably and carefully, and with a lot of thought toward not contaminating the environment in any way. So great guys, really nice people. All of the vendors at the market are just like wonderful people who are there to further their business, but also to serve the community and to enjoy themselves as well. I was talking with another vendor who sells pickles, and she says, it's just, she finds great joy in being on the campus and seeing all the students and seeing them come to the market and enjoy the outdoors. We have music every week at the market, and that just enhances the atmosphere and makes it much more of a pleasant experience. It makes it a space where people want to come and hang out, and it helps to kind of tie our community together in a really lovely way. And it's so much fun too when then the Lehigh Art Galleries come and bring us an art activity, or just highlight some of the things that are being shown in the galleries or on the Greenway. And it really enhances the community for everybody. So I'm super excited to be a part of it.
Well, we're grateful to you for everything that you do to make that possible and to bring all those people together. And South Bethlehem is still considered what would be a food desert. There's not a lot of opportunities for local community members to get access to fresh produce, fresh, affordable produce.
Right.
So everything that you do at the farmers market to bring in these small businesses who can provide that to folks is really incredible. And also to bring awareness of the resources that exist locally to people. So thank you, Deb, for all that you do for our community and the Bethlehem Farmers Market. And we're just so thrilled to work with Lone Birch Microfarm and with ZZ from Soap Muffin to connect to our featured recipe today. That Maite is going to show us a little bit of how we can cook at home using just fresh seasonal vegetables that we can get and adapt as needed, depending on what's available.
Definitely. Thank you so much. And that's amazing. I'm so inspired, Deb, hearing you talk about the farmers market. I too am obsessed with farmers markets. And I love, of course, meeting farmers, seeing what's growing, seeing what's being sold and how it's different every week. And also one of the things that I love about it is that you always see tons of families. So it brings communities together, and more than any other place, something that you won't see at a grocery store, right? I always go, there's this really great coffee vendor at my local farmers market that I always see. And I just love getting to know the farmers, and it's just amazing what people do, and that farmers markets and people like you exist. So thank you. I'm honored to be part of this program, and this seems like a great way to end the series, the fall, with these cozy vegetables and talking about family and community and all of that. I love it. So yes, we're going to get started with the soup that's adaptable to any ingredient that's available locally. So what I'm going to start with is I'm going to just slice. So I'm doing acorn squash is in the oven. So acorn squash, 2 sweet potatoes, 2 sort of this is actually quite large, sweet potatoes, apple, and onion. So I'm just going to start with the onion. Let me flip this over so that it's more interesting to look at the onion being sliced while I talk, but that's better. Okay. So all right, so I'm just going to start with an onion. So yes, I'm using 1 yellow onion. I really like the yellow onion just because it's so sweet. And I'm just going to cook this onion, sweat this onion in about 3 tablespoons of butter. And this recipe, it has cream. I'm using chicken broth. You could skip the cream. You can use vegetable broth. You can use water. This is totally adaptable. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slice it. And in the meantime, I have 3 tablespoons of butter that I'm going to put in my pan. I'm just going to start melting this. While I slice my onions. And does the farmer that we're working with also have onions, or like what is some of the produce that they typically specialize in depending on the seasons?
Right. Well, that's the thing. They are a very diverse farm, and so they have lots of different things. They do typically have onions. We're kind of coming to the end of pepper season, and tomatoes have ended. They still had some cucumbers this past week. And then, they're getting into squash, pumpkins, gourds. They had some, ornamental gourds for people who want to use them for decoration. And they do a lot of greens. So a lot of their customers come to get kale or so they've done collards in the past, and potatoes. They really, they do all different things. And so it is kind of fun because you can see the season change as you visit their table from week to week. And that's another element of shopping at a farmer's market, is it does help you to eat more seasonally. You don't have the experience of going in August or September or October and finding strawberries, for example, in this area, because that's not seasonally appropriate. And it helps you to recognize like what food really is available, like locally and naturally in your area. And it's just a kind of a more sustainable way to eat.
Absolutely. That's the best way. And I also love seeing, one of the things that strikes me always when I'm at farmers markets, just the colors, right? There's like, and eating, I like to eat colorful food. That's always the best food. And you see that in farmers markets always. So I'm doing a sweet potato now. So we're using 2 sweet potatoes for this recipe, 2 sort of medium sweet potatoes. And all potatoes are actually native to Peru, South America. There are thousands of varieties of sweet potato. Of course, of potatoes, not sweet potatoes. And let me flip this over. We're using 2 of them. I'm just lowering the heat up on my butter a little bit. I want to get my onions really nice and soft before I put the sweet potato in there. But there are thousands of different varieties of sweet potatoes in South America, and some of them are knobby. Of potatoes in South America. Some of them are sweet, some of them are not. Some of them are, purple and black and blue and just all different colors. Some of them have smoother skin, thicker skin. Some of them are knobby, very different than the few varieties that we could find, commercially in the United States. And also they have a ton of flavor. Typically around, the fall, we see sweet potato or yams, but they're not yams. When we see yams, those are actually native to Africa. So those are, but the yams that we typically find, I'm not sure about the yams, and actually I think in general, yams that or potatoes that are sold as yams in the US are not yams. Yams have a very, very thick skin, and are really knobby. They're like yucca, like that particular vegetable. So I find that sort of interesting that most of what's sold as yam is not a yam typically. But sweet potatoes, I'm going to put these 2 sweet potatoes in my onion, and I just want to show you my onion. I didn't slice it very, very thin. I just kept it, kind of, I didn't mince it, or I kept them pretty thick. I'm just going to flip this over so you could see. But I love potatoes. It's one of my favorite, and sweet potatoes. So you could see it. I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper to this. Sweet potatoes are one of my absolute favorite dish. I love sweet potato with a little bit of condensed milk. And they're amazing. And like you were saying, Deb, just going to the farmer's market, seeing what's available. It's just so much healthier. I find that image that you showed us, Stacy, about the Cuban woman celebrating her birthday, and just how people are in Cuba. There's so many people that are celebrating, these 100 years. That's the food that they're eating. Probably they're eating what's growing in the land. So I'm gonna have the 1 sweet potato, and then I'm going to use an apple. So I love apples. This is an apple. I'm not sure what apple this was. This is an apple that I had in my refrigerator. But typically the apples that we find in the grocery store are typically Fuji or Gala or, Golden Delicious and Honeycrisp. And these are the ones that are not necessarily the most flavorful, but the ones that have the sort of thicker skin that are, that withstand travel and refrigeration and all of these things, but not necessarily the most flavorful ones, and not necessarily the ones that we find at farmers markets. Sometimes the farmers market ones are not necessarily the prettiest, the most perfect, but they are absolutely the most flavorful. And apples are interesting. Apples are actually native to Central Asia, Kazakhstan specifically, and it's one of the first fruits to have been cultivated. I'm just coarsely chopping this. And there are thousands of varieties. When we go to the regular grocery store, there are a few. Farmers markets, we would have more, but there are thousands of varieties from Central Asia. They've made their way to Egypt. In Egypt, they've been cultivating apples since about 1300 BC, made their way to Europe. The ancient Greeks learned grafting techniques, and they've been cultivating apples since about 800 BC. Sort of the Greeks were cultivating apples, the Etruscans were cultivating apples, the Romans were cultivating apples, and the Romans actually took them to Britain. So I'm actually going to add 4 cups of broth. I have some organic chicken broth here. You could use, you can use vegetable broth or even water is fine. I'm just going to use some of this chicken broth just to get this really nice. And now I'm going to raise my heat. I'll add a little bit more salt and pepper to this. And I'm just going to cover it and just let it simmer until the vegetables are really nice and soft before I blend it. And then before I blend it, I'm going to go ahead and add the acorn squash to it. So I'm going to add a little bit of salt, some pepper, and I'm just going to cover this and get that simmering. For this, you can also throw in some fresh herbs, some thyme or some sage, really anything that you have available that you're growing or that you pick up at the farmers market. I'm going to add a little bit of allspice to this to give it that sort of fall flavor. Allspice is this is what it looks like whole. It looks like a giant peppercorn. And this is one of the, actually, I believe it's the only spice that is native to the Americas. It's actually Caribbean. Jamaica is the biggest producer of allspice. It's called allspice because it literally tastes like all of the spices put together. It tastes like a little bit of pepper, it tastes like cinnamon, it tastes like nutmeg, it tastes like cardamom. So it's a little bit of a combination of everything. When this is ready, I'm going to put some of about half a teaspoon, maybe a little bit less, just to flavor it, to give it that sort of fall flavor, a little sweetness. But back to the apple. The Romans introduced it into Britain around 200 BC, and it was from England that it made its way to the US in the early 17th century. So when we think of something as American as apple pie, yes and no. American in the sense that it was, sort of brought over, like so many things that were brought over. But it actually was cultivated in Mexico, Central and South America, even before the apples made their way to Massachusetts, which is where the first, apples grew. So I love this recipe. It has, a little bit of ingredients from all over that we associate with fall today. So while I wait for that to simmer, I'm going to scoop out the flesh of the butternut squash, and I'm just going to put them in a bowl. And then once the soup is ready and I'm ready to blend it, I'm going to put that soft squash in there. So I'm just going to flip this over while I scoop it out. So I think they should be cool enough to handle. And I'm just going to scoop them into a bowl. And what kind of, oh my God, it looks so good. It's so smooth and the color is just gorgeous. I have a friend who writes about, food and nutrition, and she always says, don't count your calories, count your colors. And I love that. I think that's such a great way to, to look at food. So if you're eating colorful food, you're doing something right. You're eating squash, you're eating carrots, you're eating kale, I don't know, green vegetables. So the more colors that you're eating, the healthier your diet is.
On campus, there's a dietitian, Carrie Lasky, who talks about nourishing your potential. And I love that idea of like the way that we eat the rainbow, or the way that we nourish ourselves through food. It nourishes us through everything else that we do in this life, which I think is really beautiful.
That is so beautiful. So beautiful. I love those. I love to think about food in that way. So that's it. As soon as I'm going to taste a little bit of this. It's delicious. And it's so simple. I'm just going to rinse my hands real quick. They're a little oily. And as soon as this is already starting to come to a simmer, and so I'm just going to let that simmer for about 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes, just as soon as the potatoes are soft enough to blend. And then I'm just going to blend it and taste it for seasoning, add a little bit of the allspice, maybe a little bit of honey, and optional, you could add a little bit of cream to it to make it really nice and creamy, although the potatoes are already creamy, or you could just leave it, as is. So now it's just a waiting time to wait.
If we don't have a blender at home, or like a hand blender, is it possible to what would you suggest for folks?
Yeah, if you don't have a blender, I'm going to actually use one of these hand mixers that are so handy. I love it. But what I would suggest if you don't have a blender is to cut everything smaller, sort of dice everything smaller, and then just leave it as a sort of a chunky soup. I would do that. You can also try mashing it with like a potato masher, especially, this. But you know what I would do? I would just leave it as a brothy soup with sort of chunks in it. I probably wouldn't, because you're not going to, without a blender or a hand mixer, you're not going to get. It's not going to get if you want a really smooth soup, it's really difficult to do that by hand. So I wouldn't even try. I would just do a broth with chunks of vegetables in it. And the flavor is going to be just as delicious because it's going to have the same flavor profile.
Great.
You can also, when you roast the acorn squash or whatever type of squash or pumpkin that you choose to use, you can put some dried thyme or some fresh sprigs of thyme or rosemary on them to give them that other flavor. So this is really a recipe that can be adapted to whatever you have available, and just to be, totally creative. I think it's a super simple recipe, delicious, that you could just play with.
Yeah, and very healthy. Combined with the cornbread, I think we're hitting all of the food groups there, except for meat, of course, but there's protein in it with all the other things that you added. So it's a
Exactly.
nourishing, delicious meal.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And now it's just waiting. I feel like I probably should have made it before. So what should we? I want to hear more about the farmers market. How did you get involved in this in the Bethlehem Farmers Market, Deb?
I got sort of, sucked into farmers markets quite a number of years ago. Actually, I I was a shopper at farmers markets and just found that to be a really enjoyable experience. And there was a vendor at the market in Emmaus, Pennsylvania that I often would go to. There was an orchard and they had Asian pears. And I don't know if you are familiar with Asian pears, but I consider this to be like maybe the perfect fruit. Um, like an apple, only sweeter and juicier, and just kind of uh, they're amazing. And so this one vendor had these Asian pears, and I would go every week and buy Asian pears. And at some point, they were looking for somebody to help them at the market. And I said, "Oh, pick me." And I started working for them. And they're a very interesting orchard. It's called North Star Orchard. They are in Chester County, Pennsylvania, which is a little bit south of the Lehigh Valley. And they the farmer, the grower there is he's sort of an apple rescuer and developer, and he and his partner were Penn State graduates. They had studied horticulture there, and he develops all these crazy kinds of apple varieties, and also seeks out and grows heirloom apple varieties. And they have like hundreds of different apples that they sell that like you don't find anyplace else, and certainly are not like the standard issue things that you find in the grocery store. And so it was always so much fun because the apples that they would bring would change from week to week. You wouldn't, and they were never golden delicious or red delicious or the things you mostly find. But they would be Thomas Jefferson's favorite apple, or an apple that they found growing on a farm, that came from like 1700s. And
Wow.
just like really they're such like complex and diverse flavors that it's like, wow, it's such an experience to do that. And so I worked for them for 10 years, just helping at the market and selling apples. And and that was how I got involved with farmers markets. And then I worked for the Rodale Institute, helping them with farmers markets for a while, and then came to Lehigh University to manage the market there. People come to farmers markets and they're happy and they want to be there and they're getting good food. And it's just almost always a pleasant and positive experience because it's a voluntary thing, but also people are being nourished. Like the community is being nourished and people are being nourished. And you talk about eating the rainbow, and really you can do that in a thoughtful and really effortless way, though, by shopping at the farmers market. So
yeah, absolutely. That's fascinating about those apples. I want to go and see that. That's incredible. And I'm sure they must have so many incredible stories too. And how exciting for you. I remember when I was growing up, we would go to the grocery store. I mean, I grew up in South Texas. There was like maybe two grocery stores when I was growing. There's farmers market. There's not even a farmers market. Well, there's a farmers market now that just started a few years ago. But they sell like canned, like jams and stuff. It's not really, like what you're talking about. But I remember having like red delicious and then the green apple, and that's it. There were just those two. And I remember when I lived in New York for many years, going to the Union Square farmers market in the fall and just what is this? Like, how have I not experienced this? But even just, the story of, oh, Thomas Jefferson's, so it's the Pippin, something Pippin, I think is the favorite. I can't remember.
It's called Esopus Spitzenberg.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Is that German?
Crazy.
Say that 10 times fast.
That is so interesting.
I can barely say it once.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Last summer I went to the Central Valley here in California, and I met a farmer. I can't remember the name of the farm, Matsumoto, I think. He's a peach farmer. And his peaches are, I mean, I literally wanted to cry. Like, I just couldn't believe how amazing. And he was so kind, and his family ended up in California. They were part of the internment camps in California, and he ended up staying, and he's a peach farmer, and he sells his peaches to Alice Waters, and that's the peaches that she uses in Chez Panisse. And so he's sort of the peach man. He doesn't sell them in Los Angeles where I am, but I visited his farm, and he gave me a tour of the orchards, and just talking to him, his story was just incredible. And he was talking about, the peaches, and also it rained a lot last year, but we were in just deep in drought. So just talking about that, and how some farms, some of the nearby farms, well, that actually area is where the pomegranate juice, and I think Sunkist, like a few big, companies have farms there that have a lot of money. So they talking about how they siphon water, and how some of the small farms like his farm were suffering because there was no water, and just how, everything is changing, with climate change, right? So is that something that a lot of the farmers that you work with are struggling with as well?
No, absolutely. The change, it affects everything from like what insect problems they might experience in a given year, because if we don't have a very cold winter, many more of the pests are able to like live through the winter instead of being killed off by the cold. And so that can really throw a wrench in things for the growers. And then, water, too much water, not enough water has a big role in so very many crops. And our farmers this year were irrigating early in the season because we had a very dry spring, and people who didn't have access to water were, they lost some things. And then later on we had tons and tons of rain, maybe more than was wanted, and that brings issues with fungal diseases that are able to survive better when things are just constantly wet. So it definitely, the change in the climate has an effect. And talking about like periods of drought and periods of excess water too, it can affect the flavor of fruits. When things are ripening, when tomatoes are ripening, when melons are ripening, it's actually desirable for them to have like a slightly, almost droughty experience. It enhances the sugars in the fruits. And if things are taking up a lot of water right at the time when they're ripening, it tends to produce a fruit that's less flavorful. So it's really very interesting to think about, how the climate affects everything, like from how easy it is to grow something to how it tastes once you harvest it.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, they're scientists. Like, how do you, so you just have to figure it out as you go, I guess, right? It's because every year is new.
Right.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
And when what you're saying earlier about the seed saving, like and how there are a lot of like farmers who are getting these native seeds and kind of reconstituting crops that may have died off years ago or are brought from one place to the other. It's fascinating to figure out how they're balancing all of those environmental issues with growing these native plants, and it's really amazing.
It is. And I wonder, because of climate change and because there's such an awareness of all of this, that people are wanting to preserve these native, the heirloom, the seeds, because it's happening all over. It's certainly happening in Mexico with corn and with beans, like it's happening in South Carolina with rice, so I think it's just sort of happening. People, as the climate just changes, there's need to preserve our history. So I think it's such an interesting balancing act. Going back to family and roots and traditions, right? It's all kind of all related. It's so interesting to me.
Yeah, it's, and there's some value that we don't think about in preserving these older varieties. Like we think, oh, well, if it was so great, why didn't it, why didn't it continue? And it's like, well, maybe it didn't lend itself to shipping and transports, or maybe, it didn't thrive in other conditions. The things that got mass produced, the things that get grown in great scale, tend to be, they have features that lend themselves to automation, perhaps. But we come to a place too where, the monoculture, growing acres and acres and acres of one single kind of thing has, led us into a, dangerous situation for certain crops, where if that one kind of thing doesn't fare very well because of the changing climate, and we, lose thousands of acres of a particular food, then we can have a real scarcity. You can have a shortage of that food. Bananas are the sort of current example of things where there's one kind that's grown across the world, and if that one kind succumbs to the disease that affects bananas, and I don't know what it is, but there won't be bananas. And it's because everybody said, let's grow this one kind of banana. And so the plantations did that, and all the other kinds sort of, were ignored and not perpetuated. And we run into that with corn, or with soybeans or whatever. If we don't keep the varieties that are, maybe not commercially viable, because they don't all fit through the same, cultivator, we could really, find ourselves without some, crucial things. So, farmers markets and small farmers that are preserving the diversity that we have had through the ages are so important to, ongoing, food for everybody.
Absolutely. Let's support our farmers. We have to. Yes, we have to. Absolutely. I'm going to check on our soup. But yeah, it's fascinating to me. I mean, especially I can't keep anything alive. So hearing the people do this, like how it's amazing on so many levels, but on that level, I can't keep a basil plant alive. Okay, this is really nice and soft. I'm actually going to blend this. Let me turn this off, and let me bring this over. I probably should have used a larger Dutch oven, but I think we're going to be okay. I'll add the acorn squash at the end. I'm just going to put it up here. But let me flip the camera over. Okay, yeah, that looks good. So you could see that the The potatoes are nice and soft. So I'm going to use a hand immersion blender. And one thing, if you use one of these at home, just be very careful. And when you're blending, you need to keep the blender inside the pot. Don't go like this while it's on, because it'll be a disaster. Trust me, I've done it before. You just want to make sure that it's in. If you want to take it out and move it someplace else, turn it off. Because otherwise you're going to end up with soup all over the place. So I'm just going to start blending it. I haven't added the squash yet.
The temperature is supposed to drop this weekend, so I am so excited to make this.
Oh, I think you're going to love it.
This is one of my favorite kitchen tools, I gotta say. I love a good immersion blender.
I have one. I don't use it enough. What are some things that you use it for besides soup, Deb?
Applesauce.
Ah, perfect time for that.
I like to make baked applesauce, and then just hit it with the immersion blender, and it really it's so nice.
Yum. We're supposed to go to an apple picking festival this weekend called Pick Fest in Boyertown, PA. I don't know if you've ever been to Freecon Farms, and
they were at a farmer's market that I used to see them there. Yes.
they used to have the festival on the apple orchard, but it got so big that they moved it into the town as a way to bring money into the town for the renovation of the old steam engine train that they have that goes throughout the mountains around there. It's pretty amazing.
That should be fun. You'll get some good apples.
I hope so. I would think so. They're delicious. The color of that is amazing, Maite.
I feel like this would probably be better if I just stick it in the blender because of the squash, but I think actually, never mind. I think I'm mixing it with this.
Now you didn't add any cream. That's just the creaminess of the vegetables.
This is just the creaminess of the vegetables. I'm going to add some of the allspice. And I might skip the cream actually. Let me give it a taste because it's so creamy already.
You answer that.
Instead, maybe I'll just add a little bit of cream just to oh my God, it looks so pretty, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's really nice. So the recipe, sometimes I add a little bit of honey to it, but the apples are so it's so sweet that I don't think I'm going to add any apple to it. Might add just a little bit of cream. Just to loosen it up a little bit. I probably added a couple of tablespoons, so not much at all, just to loosen it. And that's it. I'm going to put it back. Actually, it's still hot. So sometimes when I'll add cream, I'll bring it back to a simmer, but it's still steaming because I just added such a little bit. But that is it. That's our soup. So I'm just going to serve it.
That was a fairly quick recipe. So how long did you roast the squash for?
The squash roast for about, look how beautiful that is, for about 45 minutes, maybe
Okay.
50 minutes. Yeah, just until it's nice and soft. So it's a little bit thick. I might put a little bit more cream just to loosen it, or a little bit more broth. But look how gorgeous that is. I'm going to move this. I'm just going to move this back to the pan just to get it out of the way. But that's it. Maybe I'll just put like a little dollop of cream just for visual. And then a little allspice. And there's our soup.
The beauty.
Beautiful. That is a beauty, all with seasonal veggies. It's a perfect fall soup. I wish we were together to share it. You could also use some of the seeds of the pumpkin, roast some of that, and put it on top as a garnish, and just to give it a little texture, because this is so creamy, just to give it a little something. But this is a very versatile soup.
Dip that cornbread right into it.
And dip the cornbread. That's the main. Yes, exactly. That's perfect with that. That's really delicious. Really delicious. I wish it wasn't going to be 90 degrees in LA today, but it's, and this is also something that freezes really well. So that, which I love. So cheers, everybody.
Cheers. Thank
Yeah.
you for demonstrating that beautiful process, and for both of you for being with us today to talk about not only the idea of how food nourishes and brings us together as individuals and community, but and supporting small businesses, but where all of these amazing ingredients come from, and how we can celebrate our connection to both ritual, custom food, and the earth. So thank you for a wonderful program today. And our final Taste of Art program for the fall 2023 season, which is hard to believe it happened so fast, but the farmers market will continue through November 10th. So we hope folks will continue coming out to support their local farmers and small businesses, and continue to visit us at the art galleries for all of the wonderful exhibitions that we have up, including Bodies of Knowledge.
It's a great exhibit. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I can't believe it's the last one of the year, but thank you. And Deb, how amazing to meet you.
Deb, thank you for your time today. Thank you, Maite.
Thank you.
Guys. It was fun to be here.